welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful March the 30th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, I was sitting around watching Ohio State's pro day today with all those great athletes out there on the field, and I think Justin Fields might be a basketball fan because he was harking a little Moses Malone when he said fo, fo, fo at the 40. And when I do all the scouts away, but once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They're always there when you get blown away.
Fo, Big C. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. I love pausing. Hearing fo make me laugh, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help, Big C. Why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, each and every one of our shows, we try to bring attention to the plight of our great veterans in this country. That too many of them have fallen to suicide, Charlton, over 24 a day.
Yeah.
And it's an epidemic that is going on in this country that not enough people are paying attention to. Because it's not just our veterans, it's our everyday citizens. But this is supposed to be the greatest country in the world, and we're supposed to be able to solve any problem as Americans. And you think about our veterans, they gave us the ability to be in this position to solve problems in this country with every war that they have fought in, Charlton.
Yep.
So we need to have as diligent a fight for the saving the lives of our veterans as we do with every other situation in America. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. But this has to be a concerted effort amongst all Americans to help save American lives.
Yeah, very well said. I love doing our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the Home Run King, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, helping to put people back to work, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. I also want to say thank you, Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight, for bringing Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Man, Big C, it is a lot of allergies in Northern California. They say it's allergy season, whether you're at the Bay Bridge. You don't get a lot on the Bay Bridge or the Golden Gate because it's too windy for the allergies to stick inside your nose. But it's amazing. I've seen little kids, like 2-year-old kids, they let the snot slip out of their nose, it'll drip out of their nose. They'll let it go into the mouth. They'll wipe it on their face, Big C, and they don't get wrinkles. Is that why they don't get wrinkles and they don't sneeze, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you're building up the immune system as a child by taking those bacteria back
Yeah.
in. But, that I think every parent has struggled with that. But when you want to talk about pollen being in the places you need to be around in our area,
Yeah.
where you wake up every day and your streets are yellow, your cars are yellow, just everything is yellow
Yep.
from all the pollen that's flying around. You don't even need bees around here.
No.
Instead of them going out searching for pollen, Charlton, they just put a funnel on top of their little, hives and everything, and let the let the pollen come right on down.
Yeah, the pollen comes right on down. I think the kids, the universe figured out what we needed to get rid of allergies. It's just called snot. I mean, my grandparents, Big C, I used to think it was nasty when I was a kid, but they didn't go to the doctor a lot because they never really got sick. They ate a lot of garlic. They ate a lot of things out of the ground like onions, and they ate a lot of their chicken that they ate. It wasn't from fast food. It was grown in the backyard. But oftentimes, when my grandparents had to sneeze and snot was running down their nose, they didn't grab a Kleenex. They got a snot rag, and they blew their nose and put it right back in the pocket for the second use, Big C.
Well, Charlton, I'm glad I was born in the Kleenex generation.
Yeah, it's all fair and level war. They never really got sick, though. I guess Mother Nature knew how to give us what we needed. And speaking of what we need, it is March Madness, Big C. There's a lot of good things going on in the world of college basketball, and I want to touch on some college basketball. I know we have what's called a March Madness, and it is mad. Sometimes you don't get a foul call or a whistle's not called. They swallow the whistle, as you sometimes say, Big C, and it can cost a team, but that's all fair and level war. Sometimes we don't want the officials to be the reason that a game is lost or won, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, we've seen too much of that here in this tournament of both the men and women's side, Charlton. There's been a lot of egregious situations where fouls weren't called or fouls that were called that was unnecessitated.
Yeah.
I witnessed a game last night where the referees were swallowing the whistle.
Yeah.
You talk about the most physical women's game that I've seen in some time, Charlton. Happened last night between Baylor and UConn.
Yeah, and I think about it too, because just like you, I want to see. I mean, I really do want to see good basketball. But we want to pay homage to the women of college basketball first, Big C. Women's college basketball, a great game last night in the college women's basketball universe. You had the Baylor call foul on non-call at the end of the game in the Elite Eight, lost to UConn. UConn is headed to its 13th consecutive women's Final Four, Big C, with a chance at a 12th national championship. 12th national champions. They're trying to beat UCLA, what they did back in the day. But, Big C, it came after a controversial non-call at the end of the Huskies' 69-67 victory over Baylor, Big C, Monday night in the Alamo Dome, trailing 68-67. 5 seconds left. Baylor's guard, DeJohnny Carrington, appeared to be fouled. She was fouled by two Huskies players, by Edwards and also Odota, Big C. And she went up for a shot. No foul was called. UConn got the ball back, and then Kristen Williams was fouled. She made one free throw with less than 1 second left, Big C, which accounted for the final score. And the Riverwalk Region #1 seed Huskies survived behind a freshman Paige Booker's 28 points, and the officials helped a little bit, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, it was a badly called game, Charlton, all throughout. I mean, that was just the last one of the game that became very egregious. But throughout that contest, you just saw foul after foul from these young ladies beating up on each other.
Yeah.
You know, it reminded me a lot of the former Detroit Pistons bad boys, the way that they were physical all night long playing a game. But that last shot of the game by Baylor,
Yep.
where the young lady came down, she was hit in the face by one hand and on
Yep.
the arm with another hand
Yep.
as she was making the shot attempt, and the ball only traveled about 5 feet.
Yeah.
She had been, molested so much out there on the court, Charlton.
No call.
This is the thing that we've been looking at, throughout the officiating and even the NBA.
Yeah.
There comes times when you're watching a game as a spectator and you want to feel for the athlete.
Yeah.
That they're doing all they can to win a game.
Yep.
But when you're having that third party intervene and taking that opportunity away from these young ladies
Yeah.
that they fought all year and so hard to get to that point, and the disgust that they have to go through, Charlton, knowing that they had an opportunity
Yeah.
and they were not allowed to execute it.
Yeah, they in the old days they said they got robbed. It's all fair and level war. But congratulations to UConn.
Rob, they got stolen. Rob put the word. They got stolen.
Yeah. Now Deion Sanders isn't the only one who could complain about being robbed, Big C. But Deion Sanders got his stuff back. Baylor's not going to get their groove back until next year. Big C, college basketball on the men's side. Houston had liftoff. They topped the Oregon State Beavers, and they reached their first Final Four since 1984. Yes, Houston had liftoff, Big C, going back to the Final Four for the first time since the famed Phi Slamma Jamma, Big C. That era back in the day, it was Monday night, 67-61, over Oregon State. And we were right. We predicted, in reality, a Cougar could beat a Beaver, Big C. Your thoughts?
Cougar, for a Beaver, that's a nice dinner for that Cougar and stuff. So,
Yeah.
They knew it was easy. They really can't fight back unless they get under the water, Charles.
Yep.
That's the only chance that they had. But they were playing on the hardwood. We
Yeah.
know that Beavers like these wood, but they got their wood handed to them last night.
Yeah, Beavers like these wood, and they got handed to their tail on the wood. It's all fair and level. But Oregon State, the Fighting Beavers, they were not supposed to be here anyway, so they milked it as long as they could. And when you think about it, it's never supposed to be easy to get to the second seed Cougars to get to the Final Four. They're 28-3, Big C, and they also beat Memphis State. They beat them twice, Big C, that went on to win the NIT. So you look at what the Cougars are doing. The Final Four for the first time in 37 years. Sampson, their coach, Big C, and his team proved them right, blowing a 17-point lead before presenting the 12th-seeded Beavers from adding one more surprising result to a Midwest region bracket that was beset by upsets. I thought the AC Green and Gary Payton were playing for Oregon State the way they started out early in the game, and then Maurice Kalu, Big C, dropped 13 points to lead Oregon State. They finished 20-13, which was vying to become the worst-seeded team to ever make the Final Four, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the Cougars just had too much. I mean, every now and then that little lucky charm in your back pocket runs out, and that's what happened to the Beavers last night.
Yeah.
It wasn't Phi Slamma Jamma for the Houston Cougars, Charlton, but this team that Kevin Sampson has assembled over the last 2 years has been mighty good.
Yeah, they've been mighty good. So it's good to see that Houston's getting back after 37 years. That's a long layout, Big C. They're going to face the Baylor Bears. So it's a battle of Texas, and a lot of good old boys are going to be looking forward to that game, especially down in the state of Texas. Isn't it something, Texas, the marquee program, the Texas Longhorns, did not make it as far as what you have in Houston? It's considered a smaller tier program in Texas, and also Baylor, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you're looking at college basketball, it's all about athleticism. I mean, you can sit there and say Power 5 here and there.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Final Four, Charleston, you got two teams in the Final Four that are not in Power 5 conferences.
Yep.
The equality in men's and women's college basketball is across the board because there's so much talent out there that kids can go to a lesser-named university and they have just as much success.
Yeah, that's very well said, Big C. Speaking of success, I want to go to tonight's games. We don't give out scores. I know the first game is pretty much already concluded, Big C, and then we have the second game, so USC and also Gonzaga doing their thing. But NCAA college basketball, Big C, the college basketball universe, you think of the great UCLA. Can they summon 11 national championships, that pedigree, Big C, with the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, the great Bill Walton, Reggie Miller, the great Russell Westbrook? Can they beat Michigan? Or will the Wolverines be the new Fab Five and not call a timeout without time left on the clock, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Miller and Westbrook never won a championship, so if they summon those two guys, you know what UCLA is going back home.
Yeah.
But, this is a chance for them to try to get back to national prominence. I mean, when you think about the season that they had and where they've risen here on the national stage during the tournament, it bodes well for the program. They got a second-year coach that has finally got some guys to follow his lead.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. Every now and then you got to change up what you've been doing as a program. And
all right, Big C, we got you back on I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he blocked the phone line, Big C, off fair level before. But you were saying, go right ahead, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, like I said, the last time that UCLA got this far in the tournament, Charlton, Steve Lavin was their coach and took them to their last national championship.
Yeah, I remember they had a great play. Tyus Edney was doing his thing for the UCLA Bruins back then. And when you think about it, we talked about the great Bill Walton and how he has the greatest commentary if you're from Woodstock, because a lot of people can't understand what he's saying, but he does have a lot of, I guess, knowledge to drop. But you said he also hung out with the Chief for the Boston Celtics. Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he and the Chief were best of friends. I mean, the Chief got arrested a couple times trying to get through airports because he always traveled with a pound of marijuana on the road trip. And the NBA knew that the players were using it even back in the 80s, Charlton, and they never really put their foot down on the recreational use by the players because they know the pain that they run through. When you're running up and down the court 82 games during the regular season on that hardwood floor, Charlton, and you think about the shoes that players wore back in the 80s, they were nowhere near technologically advanced as what they have today.
And on the other side, so with Kareem and all the pedigree for UCLA, a lot of West Coast guys are pulling for them. But you think about Michigan, they've been so hard luck. When the time back in the day when Chris Webber called the timeout, they had no timeouts left. I know they had Jalen Rose. They had a lot of good players, Big C. 4 of those starters went to the NBA. But this is a new look team. And yet they have the coach who was at the scene of the timeout, Big C. The coach was at the scene of the timeout. Maybe they'll know how many timeouts they have now. It's going to be kind of up and down for UCLA, and they have great defense versus a team in Michigan that's going to try to play over the top. But this is going to come down to possessions and making possessions count, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this Michigan team reminds me a lot of the Glenn Rice-led Michigan team, Charlton, that did win the national title back in the early 90s, So, this team has a lot more continuity. They have a lot more older lineup. You think about that Fab Five, you had all these freshmen, so mistakes were inevitable at that time. But now, you got a team that's very well coached under Howard. He has Phil Martell on the bench that has given him great leadership, from an assistant coach perspective. This is a new-look Wolverines team. They've been battle-tested for the last 2 years. I think their experience should pay off in the end.
Well, we'll see if a bear can eat a Wolverine. In reality, I think it could, Big C, but we'll see what happens when those good old boys tip off tonight. Also, can USC and the mighty Trojans bring that white horse and the Twin Towers to the basketball game against Gonzaga, the Bulldogs, Big C, on the way to the Final Four? Universe is West Coast versus West Coast, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, every time that white horse shows up at a big game, there ends up being a big barbecue after that game, Charlton. And I don't know what heat is on the menu, but there's always seems to be a new horse the following year at USC. Gonzaga is a team that's loaded with talent. I think USC has run out of gas down the line, Charlton, and they'll be sitting at home watching the Final Four like a lot of other teams across the country.
Yeah, it's already in the script. When I saw their first play of the game, USC, they had a one-on-one, and they had a turnover, kind of a handoff to Gonzaga, and Timmy went down and got a layup and a foul. It's all fair, love it, war. But I wish them nothing but the best. I do want to ask you a thought, because we've been on COVID-19 protocol. It put the whole season on pause, Big C. And then for college basketball, it wasn't a man that said this. It was a woman, and sometimes we think that women have more common sense than men. But Kim Mulkey of Baylor, the Lady Bears, said the NCAA should do away with COVID-19 testing for the Final Four. I know she's from Texas, Big C. But after the games today and tomorrow, there's 4 teams left. I think on the men's side and the women's side, she said it unprompted during her post-game news conference. Obviously, she was probably upset seeing that they just got robbed by the officials against UConn, Big C. But she says they need to dump COVID testing, and it would be a shame to keep COVID testing. And then if you get kids that test positive or something, they don't get to play in the Final Four. You just need to forget the COVID test and let the people get sick, if that makes sense. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to look at it from Kim's perspective, and I really respect her observation.
Yeah.
Is that you've gone this far, and if you've been around somebody and you tested positive, Charlton, contact tracing, you've been in the locker room with everybody. You've been on the court with everybody.
Yeah.
So what's the difference a week is going to make? I mean, I really like her perspective on this, is that these kids have come too far to make them suffer because you've given them a test.
Yeah.
And, it is shown that the kids that have tested positive, Charlton, they've been able to come back within a week or so and play without any ill effects.
Yeah.
I think that the NCAA finally would do a great service, as Smokey said, walk away from the testing for this 1 week, Charlton, because if you penalize the team, all of a sudden they got 3 to 4 players that you have contact tracing on, and they're undermanned or underwoman going into a final.
Yeah.
How does that look for everybody? We saw where Oregon State, I believe it was, Oregon got a free pass because the team tested positive.
Yeah, UVA.
And so you had a Pac-12 team advancing without even having to play. You cannot come back and penalize these young men and women in the final week of the season saying, we're not going to let you play. But if you do that, Charlton, then you need to move the Final Four at least another week instead of forcing someone to be understaffed, player-wise.
Yeah, the L.A. Dodgers, Big C, they agree with her because when you had Justin Turner had tested positive COVID-19. They knew about it in the second inning. They didn't remove him until after the seventh inning stretch, and it helped the Dodgers go on to win the World Series. I wish everybody the best. Should be some great basketball. And in the words of the great Bill Walton, welcome to the UCLA universe. He says a little bit different than we do, Big C, but it's all fair in love and war. And speaking of UCLA fight, I want to jump to the world of the NBA. You have the great Russell Westbrook, Big C. We talked about him earlier. He also played for the UCLA Bruins. He had 35 points, his season high, 21 assists, 14 rebounds, in his NBA leading 16th triple-double. The Bruins might use him tonight, Big C, helping the Washington Wizards to a 132-124 win over the Indiana Pacers on Monday night. And then you have Hachimura, Big C, dropped in 26 points. Chandler Hutchison dropped in 18 in his debut with the Washington Wizards, who won their second straight game after losing 8 of 9, Big C. Your thoughts?
When I hear those numbers about Westbrook, he reminds me of a great soul group from the early 70s called the Spinners, and they had a song called The Rubber Band Man.
Yep.
And that's what Russell Westbrook was, Charlton. He was stretching the court in every way that he could. You think about a guy scoring 35 points and getting 21 assists. He is basically the entire offense for a team. And then not only that, he backed it up with 11 rebounds.
Yeah.
He was like a rubber band, elastic band, Charlton.
Yep.
He was all over the place.
He was the rubber band. There you go, protect yourself for the rubber band. I remember that song. It was also in the Avengers. It's always amazing. I'm sure UCLA wants to welcome him back to the Final Four tonight, but it's all fair in love and war. When you look at Domantas Sabonis, Big C, he dropped 35 points, 11 rebounds for the Pacers, who lost for the second time in 6 games. Malcolm Brogdon dropped 26 points for Indiana. And then when you think about the great Russell Westbrook again, he recorded the first 30-plus point and then 20-plus points in assists, Big C, triple-double, since the great Irvin Magic Johnson's 32 points, 11 rebounds, and 20 assists. That was November of 1988, Big C. Your thoughts?
There's the Magic Man, the Rubber Band Man, Charlton, they all run synonymous with each other. But I tell you what I'm most impressed with is Sabonis.
Yeah.
It is a rarity when you get to professional sports, Charlton, and you find the son of a former professional athlete that is better than his father. We saw that in baseball with Ken Griffey Jr. We saw it with Barry Bonds, in baseball, his dad, Bobby Bonds, who played also in the major leagues, Charlton. And now we're seeing it in the NBA with Sabonis. It's very rare, especially in basketball, that the son can ever be better than the father. But we're seeing that with Sabonis. His dad was an outstanding center with the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you compare the great Russell Westbrook with the great Magic Johnson in their NBA feats, they both did it when you think about it. UCLA for Russell Westbrook, and then Michigan State for Magic Johnson. UCLA knocked off Michigan State earlier this year in the first 4 playing for the Final Four. The difference about Magic and Russell Westbrook, Magic has 5 NBA championships. I'm sure Russell can still count. Magic's probably retired unless LeBron James doesn't get healthy. Any chance Magic coming in for like 5 minutes a game for the Lakers? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, no, Magic's playing days is long behind him, but you also got to look at the talent that Magic was surrounded by.
Yeah.
The coaching staff also. I mean, it was a team that was put together to win. This is a team when Magic had showed up.
Yeah.
Was just offered the NBA championship, so it wasn't like he was going in playing with a lot of bums.
Yep.
All he had to do was fit in.
Imagine, Magic was so good. He played all positions in a playoff game one time, but he got to play with the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Kareem was in his prime. And then he had, of course, James Worthy, Byron Scott. I mean, you can just go down the list. But when you can play with the greatest basketball player, in my opinion, in the history of the NBA universe, I would say it's Kareem. Based on numbers and championships won, Big C, plus you look at what he did at UCLA when he was playing for the Bruins back in the day. They wish they could have him tonight also. But I just appreciate that someone can even match what the great Magic Johnson did, and you have that with the great Russell Westbrook, UCLA's finest. Big C, also NBA news, 2021 NBA MVP. I think I read the script, Big C. The great James Harden dropping 38 points. Now listen to me, Big C. When I was a young boy, and sometimes I didn't listen to my parents, they had to say it twice. Listen to me. 38 points, 13 assists, 11 rebounds, tying the Nets' single-season record for his 12th triple-double, Big C, in just 32 games. Okay, it's amazing anyone gets a triple-double, but his 12th in 32 games, Big C. They held off the Minnesota Timberwolves 112-107 on Monday night. The great Kyrie Irving dropped 27 points in his return, but Big C, 38, 13, and 11, that's the MVP, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, he is truly the MVP. It's not that the media writers and broadcasters want to give it to him. They keep trying to find a way to not give James Harden the MVP. But you think about his performance, he speaks for itself. He broke Jason Kidd's Nets record as far as triple-doubles in a season, and he's done it in less than 40 games. So it took Jason Kidd twice as many games to set that record.
Yeah.
But it shows when James Harden is in and out of the lineup. It was the last game he was out of the lineup, the Nets got handled. He comes back, they're back on a winning streak. And all you have to do is look no further than the Houston Rockets and see how dismal that team is and wonder how good James Harden is.
Yeah, he's really good. Artesia High School's finest, Southern California. He broke Jason Kidd's record out of St. Joseph Notre Dame of Alameda to California Predators. It's all fair 11 war. The great Karl Anthony Towns, Big C, he dropped 31 points. He had 12 rebounds for the Timberwolves. And the great Anthony Edwards dropped 23 points and 10 boards, but missed a free throw that could have tied it in the final minute, and then a short jumper that could have given Minnesota the lead. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you could call that rookie jitters for Edwards. I mean, but he's been playing outstanding since the All-Star break. This rookie has been as good as advertised, being the number one overall pick in the NBA.
Yep.
For Karl Anthony Towns, it was a somber moment last night, Charlton. That was his first game back since the loss of his mother, and he had to look in the stands and only see his father. It was kind of heart-wrenching for him.
Yeah, it was heart-wrenching for him, but you got to rise and shine. I wish that young man nothing but the best. Moms are so beautiful. It's all fair and level war. Big C, the great Luka Doncic dropped 25 points, helped the Dallas Mavericks roll past the Oklahoma City Thunder by the score of 127-106 on Monday night. Kristaps Porzingis dropped 20 points, had 9 rebounds, and the great Tim Hardaway Jr. added 19 points for the Mavericks for good cooking. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Kristaps Porzingis, alias Ichabod Crane at Charlton, when he's playing well, it really helps out the Maverick offense. Everyone knows what Luke is going to do night in and night out. He's that consistent player in the NBA, one of the budding stars. But you're getting points from Porzingis. You're getting points from Hardaway Jr. Here's another kid. His dad just won the NIT tournament, and so he's showing the old man that he can play.
He's trying to show old man some new tricks. Alex Kidd, Poskevich, Big C led Oklahoma City with 21 points. Steve Makakulak, Big C, dropped 16 points in his first start for the Thunder since being traded from Detroit. And then Theo Maledon added 14 points for the Thunder, who lost their third straight. Big C, your thoughts?
I was amazed that Oklahoma didn't get rid of Steven Adams at the trade deadline to give this young man an opportunity to be with a playoff contender, Charlton, because he can really help a team down the stretch. And he's with a team in Oklahoma that's rebuilding. His career is going into the tank.
It's going into the tank, Big C. It's all fair level war. The great De'Aaron Fox with the Sacramento Kings dropped 24 points. The great Rashawn Holmes added 23 points, 12 rebounds. And the Sacramento Kings beat the San Antonio Spurs 132-115 on Monday night. It was their 5th straight victory, and it looked like Chris Webber and Vadi Divac showed up with Doug Christie back in the show. Big C,
Well, maybe the Sacramento Kings were doing load management in the first half of the season and not trying and resting everybody because they seem to have found new life after the All-Star break, Charlton, and they're out hustling people. So I guess that was their philosophy: lose the first half of the season and win the second.
I think Coach Walton let them listen to his father's motivational speech. They said, the great Bill Walton is so relaxed. Luke cannot do what Bill did, Big C, on the court or off the court. But you want to get a team motivated, let them listen to the great Bill Walton do the motivational speak. I think the Sacramento Kings are playing a little bit more relaxed, if that makes sense to you, Big C. San Antonio point guard Dejounte Murray dropped 23 points, but only had 2 points in the second half on 4 attempts, and then Derek White dropped 19 points for the Spurs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, both of those teams are going nowhere fast, Charlton. They're positioning themselves for the draft. They got rid of some players to open up some capital for next year, Charlton. Maybe they'll get big in the free agent market.
Yeah, they may get big in the free agent market, but I think the Kings will be the 10th spot in the West in the play-in since they expanded the playoffs. They're playing like they want to get And, when you bring in Bill Walton and speak to people, they play a little bit better. The great Donovan Mitchell dropped 19 points. Rudy Gobert added 18 and 17 rebounds in one game. And the great Utah Jazz to their sixth straight win, 114-75 over Cleveland on Monday. The great Colin Sexton scored 20 points. Darius Garland dropped 18 for the Cavs, who lost, think about this, 3 of their last 4 games on the road stretch. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, right now it's about the contenders and the pretenders. I mean, a lot of teams have bailed it in, even though you got, half the season left to play.
Yeah.
But teams are not always into it when they know that they don't have a chance for a championship.
Yeah, a lot of teams are trying to mellow in. It's all film level. Well, the great Steph Curry made a triumphant return, a 5-game absence with a bruised tailbone. Big C dropped 32 points, 6 3-pointers, while the Golden State Warriors snapped a 4-game losing streak, beating the Chicago Bulls 116-102 on Monday night. And Nikola Vucevic, Big C, dropped in 21 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists in the second game with the Chicago Bulls. Big C, since being traded from the Magic, but the Bulls lost their 4th straight, and they're 6 in the last 7. Big C, your thoughts?
Vucevic is one of the best big men in the NBA, Charlton. I think he's going to help that team. But we're looking at next season. Zach LaVine has to be more consistent when you have a big man that can help you out.
Yeah, they got to be able to help him out more often throughout the whole game. Big C. The great Marcus Morris dropped 25 points, and 3 other starters had at least 20 points helping. The Los Angeles Clippers beat the Milwaukee Bucks 129-105. It was a lopsided game at the end, Big C. When you think about it, it was their 6th straight victory. The great Claw, Kawhi Leonard, dropped 23 points, 9 rebounds. Luke Kennard had a season-high 21 points. And then Reggie Jackson added 20 points. The great Giannis Antetokounmpo, Big C, for the Bucks, dropped 32 points, making 10 of 12 free throws. And Drew Holiday added 24 points in the opener of a 6-game trip, their longest in the second half. I didn't think they would get beat so soundly, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, see, Middleton was missing in that scoring punch last night, Charlton, as I mentioned the night before. They got to get between 22 and 25 points a game from Middleton if they want to have success in an Eastern Conference playoff run. You know what you're going to get from Giannis.
Yeah.
And Holiday pumped in some points, but Middleton has always been the missing part of the equation when you get to Milwaukee. The past 2 years, he has become, they've sent out an all-points bulletin looking for him, a missing persons report, because he has just not showed up for any games.
He's not showed up for any games. Maybe he wanted to get out and take a pause. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about basketball and also some thoughts on African-American history. And can you believe the NFL wants to play all over the universe? In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow Big C Sports, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. So many people are appreciating the fact. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, we do have a very small NBA schedule tonight. I guess a lot of guys want to take the time off to watch March Madness, Big C. We have Charlotte at Washington. If Russell Westbrook's not in the UCLA uniform tonight, then he'll be doing his thing also for the great team for Washington. Philadelphia at Denver. Might be the game of the night, Philadelphia at Denver, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Denver's playing well, Charlton. Philadelphia's going to have their hands full on the road when you got a team with a wealth of shooters, which is something that Philadelphia is still trying to get in the groove since the trade deadline, and they picked up a few new shooters. But
yep.
I think that Denver's going to handle them well tonight.
Well, another great 2 games, Orlando at the L.A. Clippers. They might be smarting a little bit after their blowout of the Milwaukee Bucks, Big C. And then Atlanta trying to get back in the swing of things. That bird is going to fly down to Phoenix where it might get a little hot in the oven, Big C. The Phoenix Suns are rising, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got two birds going against each other, Charlton. The road runners down there in Phoenix who like to lay low on the ground, but you got the Hawk who like to soar. And so you're going to see if that Hawk can come down and pick off that road runner.
Yeah, we're going to see if a Hawk can pick off the road runner. Why was the road runner always trying to beat up Bugs Bunny? Bugs Bunny's such a nice rabbit, Big C, you know?
Well, you know, they're meat eaters also, so they got a little carnivorism in them.
You could have had the Big C burger. It is a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meat. Speaking of tasty, I want to touch on some African-American history, Big C. I know it still makes my stomach turn when I realize that Brian Kemp can be a governor in a state that's all about civil rights, and he wants to stop people from voting, and they praise Dr. Martin Luther King. Yeah, it's amazing how they're still trying to undo all of his work that he did back in the day. Brian Kemp.
You got to realize how Brian Kemp became the governor of Florida. When you take and you throw 150,000 posters, Charlton, off the voting roll when you're the lieutenant governor of the state, that means you're in charge of elections, and that's what Brian Kemp did.
Yep.
And he won by just a mere 53,000 votes, but he took 150,000 voters of minority race off the voting poll prior to the election to allow himself to win.
Yeah, some people love to cheat. It's all fair and love and war, but he should really be removed from office. There has to be some way that he could just get out of there for breaking laws. I want to touch on African American history. We are inspired every day by the accomplishments and the endeavors of people that are sometimes lesser well known, Big C, great pro black athletes, as you'll see for March Madness tonight. Every pro team's Jackie Robinson. November 4th, 1950, Nat Sweetwater Clifton, Chicago schoolboy legend Nat Sweetwater Clifton plays his first game for the New York Knicks. Big C is one of the first African-American players in the NBA. Signing his $2,500 contract made him the first African man to secure an NBA paperback. Big C. He would also emerge as the league's first African-American impact player. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you're thinking about Nate Sweetwater Clifton, Charlton, he was a basketball legend in the city of New York, in the playgrounds there at Rutgers Park in New York, Charlton. He went on to college, and once he left college, Charlton, he participated with the Harlem Globetrotters at that time. He played. He took his skills there. That's how talented of a ball handler he was. And when he got an opportunity to play for his hometown team, the New York Knicks, Charlton, he didn't disappoint. You know, you think about the ability of African-American players and how they were blocked in those years in the 50s and 40s from playing professional basketball because people were aware of their talent, and they knew that once you allowed them in, that you were going to lose status in the game.
Like the governor of Georgia, don't let them vote if you want to win. This is such a crooked governor. It's a shame. But one of the first three African-American players in the National Basketball Association, also known as the NBA, Nat Sweetwater Clifton, was actually a first under official contract to play in the league. He was a first in another way as well, Big C. Many people don't know this, but he might be considered the NBA's first black star. We think about guys like Jordan and King James now, Big C, while Chuck Cooper and Earl Lloyd, Clifton's African-American contemporaries, who also integrated the NBA the year 1950, were low-key and more profile players, Big C. But Clifton was a popular figure and born entertainer. He delighted fans with his feats on the court, and some say that he had come of age in the multi-million-dollar era endorsement deals. He'd be one of the most well players known to this day, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, his ball skills, Charlton, were phenomenal. Like I said, he participated with the Harlem Globetrotters, so he knew the value of being an entertainer. And that was one of the things that a lot of white owners and general managers and coaches were fearful of.
Yeah.
Is that the ball skills of the black athletes in that area were much more superior to their white counterparts, Charlton. And they knew the competitive advantage that the black athletes would have. And that was their biggest fear, is that the fans would fall in love with their style of play.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people did what they did, and the fact that they did it in Jim Crow is even more amazing because there's a lot of stress that's put on a lot of people. Just like the George Floyd, you hear about them doing the trial today. It was actually 9 minutes and 29 seconds that Officer Chauvin, I don't even want to call him an officer, that the criminal officer had his knee on a man's neck, and he murdered him in broad daylight. And then you have the defense attorney. Of course, defense attorneys do what they got to do, but he was saying the officers feared for their lives because people were standing around saying, please don't kill him. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this has been the status of America through its inception. If not for those videos, you think that there would even be a trial being held? And I'm still fearful that he'll be left off, because all you have to do is get one person to feel that, this was justified, and you'll have a hung jury, and he will not be convicted. What the defense is trying to do, Charlton, is convince the jurors and the nation. You cannot believe your lying eyes.
Yeah.
Is that there was another reason for Mr. Floyd's death in this situation. It wasn't because the officers killed him. There were underlying circumstances that led to the cause of death, not him being choked to death, as the coroner said.
Yeah, he had his hands behind his back. He was laying on the ground, and people saw it. It's humanity. I grew up around people that used to go out and fish, Big C, and they're farmers. They would go out and hunt, and sometimes they were more humane to the livestock that they wanted to take home and eat than to do what they did to that man. And you still have people saying, "Don't believe your eyes. Your eyes can deceive you." Man, it's a joke of a system sometimes. We just got to hope that everything works out well. That's why we have the criminal justice system.
It's not the system, Charlton. It's the people that are doing the talking. You can't blame the system on the people that are doing the talking. They set up the system, and they've been led to tell you that you have to trust in them, not what you see.
Yeah.
We saw that in the Rodney King beating, Charlton, some 30 years ago in America, where we had the first videotape trial on television.
Yeah.
The whole United States witnessed the man being beaten for 12 minutes. But yet the prosecution was able to convince
they get him off.
The jurors, that man deserved to be beat like that, that the cops were in fear of their lives. All 16 of them were in fear of their lives because Rodney King was displaying superhuman strength. And you're going to hear that same thing about George Floyd.
Yeah.
That these officers, you've already heard a temptation of it, that they were in fear for their safety. They were in fear of the 12 people that were standing on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
They weren't in fear of the cars coming by thinking that they would get hit by a car. They were in fear of the people telling them, have some compassion for this man who is suffering.
Yeah.
That's what they were in fear of. They weren't in fear of their lives. They were in fear of being seen more than anything else.
Yeah, and ironically, there is hope in the system. When the 911 operator, she says she thought the video camera had frozen. That's why he was so long on his neck. So a 911 operator, she testified under oath that she also called for backup because something didn't seem right. And that's what we're asking for. Just do the right thing. It's amazing that...
Well, Charlton, think about this. You had an off-duty firewoman who was there asking could she take his pulse, that they needed to take his pulse. She's a firefighter in Minneapolis. She was off-duty that day going for a walk, and she walked up on the situation asking could she help and take his pulse, because that's a requirement of EMTs, firefighters, and police officers. You talk about protect and serve. When you have a man handcuffed down on the ground, he has been subdued. It is time to put him in the car.
Yeah.
But even when the ambulance showed up, Charlton, and the ambulance driver asked Chauvin to take his knee off of Floyd's neck, he refused to.
Yeah.
He had to come back a second time and pull him off of Floyd. He had his intent to kill that man.
Yeah.
Because they had a pre-relationship. It should come to trial because they're security in the same nightclub.
Yeah. Something about, I guess we'll figure out about the counterfeit. Maybe Chauvin knew what the counterfeit was going on. It's all a joke, Big C. I hope that we get justice. It's all fair and love and more. I wanna pause. I wanna exhale, because seeing that for 9 minutes, 29 seconds, we've been spending the last year talking about 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I mean, I guess it's so egregious, but to see that there was even more than what had the whole world go on pause and fight for justice and ask for justice. And I hope they'll keep asking for justice as they're putting this on television. Big C, the NFL universe, they decided they want to expand the game. They're expanding in 17 games. International games will begin in Canada. They follow Big C Sports in Canada. They're also going to play a game in Europe. They follow Big C Sports in Europe. They're going to play a game in Mexico. They follow Big C Sports in Mexico. South America, they follow Big C Sports in South America. They're also going to play a game in the United Kingdom. What they should also do is schedule a game in Africa. Imagine what that would do for the African-American players that make up 70% of the league, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's part of the international policy, Charlton, that they're not ready to dove in yet. But, this is something that, is going to be fought back against. I mean, a lot of players are being in reserve about this, especially older players, Charlton. I don't think expansion has happened in the league since the early 80s when they went to 16. I think it was 78 when they went to 16 games, in the NFL. And so this is something that's kind of concerning. People say, well, they're getting rid of one preseason game. Yes, you're getting rid of one preseason game, but most veterans only played half in total of a preseason game throughout the preseason.
That's right.
So you're adding an extra game to the bodies of these veterans, and we see the injuries that keep compiling in the NFL year in and year out. This is a very tough physical game.
Yeah.
It's like the person who sits at home talking about, I can play. No, you can't. You're doing the best thing you can. Sit your butt in your recliner because you cannot come out on the field and play. It takes a special person to play in the NFL. It is one of the most rigorous, toughest sports that you can ever deal in. I know we talk a lot about the MMA, but the MMA fights can last anywhere from, 10 seconds to, 5 rounds as far as the professional.
Yeah.
We're talking about NFL players who are out there for an hour, beating on each other and hitting each other with body blows that you don't always see, like in the MMA, and that's what causes a lot of injuries in the league, Charlton. But this is going to be one of those things I think they're going to have to really pay attention to the injury studies at the end of the year to see how it affected the bodies of those NFL players.
Well, they've already paid attention to the studies. Remember, they had the CTE lawsuit settlement, Big C. They know it's going to hurt people, but it's about diminishing returns. And if there's more money, they're going to play more games. NFL owners, they have approved the expansion of the regular season to 17 games. They did that today. Long expected, Big C. That decision will generate additional revenue for the country's richest sports league. The NFL it's like the goose that laid the golden egg, Big C, and it keeps laying eggs. They're not going to put that goose on pause. The preseason, as you mentioned, going to be reduced to 4 games and from 4 to 3 to maintain compliance with the collective bargaining agreement, which limits the total number of preseason and regular season games played to 20. It's a lot different from 1978 when they expanded, but there will remain 1 week. It's going to be a bye week for each team. The season's going to begin Thursday night, September 9th, and will end January 9th, September in 2022. The Pro Bowl is going to be played February 6th at Allegiant Stadium in beautiful Las Vegas, and then the Super Bowl is going to be played at beautiful SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, California, and they may push it back 1 week from February 6th to 13th in 2022. So we got another year, but it's going to happen, Big C. Your thoughts?
What was the biggest move that the league did 2 weeks ago? You call that, Charlton?
No, I don't.
When they put in a salary cap, where they reduced the salary cap to the teams, Charlton, where they reduced it 8% revenue. Think about that. You reduce the salary cap, you get the players to buy into it and the Players Association. Then 3 weeks later, Charlton, you add in an extra game.
Yeah.
That extra game will still be revenue that's generated for those owners, okay?
Yeah.
They're going to make that full boat, but you've already taken money out of the players' pockets. So those players are going to be stuck with that salary reduction. Look how many players restructured their contract and took less money going into this year. Think about the profit margin for those owners, Charlton, with that extra week of NFL games being played.
Yeah.
When you talk about a single week in the NFL, and you're talking about generating $1 billion in revenue or more in that single week.
Yeah.
Who in the hell is winning? The players are getting their butts kicked all the way through this deal.
Well, they can always get a job at Home Depot if making what they're making is not happy. A lot of the guys back in the 70s, they would have loved having the chance to make more money. A lot of those guys had second jobs. But it's a playoff, Big C. More money will always rule out. It's going to trump everything, whether it comes to health or not. I want to ask you about this All-Star game. The NFL is going to bring it back to Pro Bowl. If they're going to bring back the Pro Bowl, I like the way they played the Pro Bowl when they had it in Honolulu, Hawaii. The players really played. I'm not saying they played like they were in a playoff game, but they played. And this nouveau riche type of Pro Bowl, it's almost like touch football with pads on, Big C. Your thoughts?
Hell, ain't nobody going to play anymore in the Pro Bowl, Charlton. When it used to be played in Hawaii, you had real football players that played a game.
Yeah.
And, the game became intensified the second half of the fourth quarter. Now everybody's about their marketing and appearance and protecting themselves. Nobody's going to go out there and do anything more than play touch or flag football. I think that the NFL should scrap that. You can't have the Pro Bowl in any place other than Hawaii. Unfortunately, that stadium is being condemned over in Honolulu, Charlton. but nobody in the United States wants to sit around and see a non-football game.
Yeah, I mean, people watch it. I guess they watch flag football. It's for the guys that say they can play in the league. I guess here's your chance. Go play flag football. It's all fair and level war. But coming to Canada, coming to Europe, South America, Mexico, United Kingdom, and hopefully Africa. You know, soccer's huge in Africa. Bring the American football version of football to the African continent. That's where most of the players' lineage comes from anyway. All life began on the African continent. I couldn't believe.
Well, maybe that's what they should do with the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
Take it out of the continental United States. If you allow all of these superstars to travel to another continent, I think the NFL would sell their product even better, because you're going to have greater fanfare for people just wanting to be around these superstar athletes.
Yeah.
Versus when you look at, American fans, they're used to seeing a full-blown football game.
Yeah, they take the NFL to Europe. 70% of the league is not from Europe. They're from Africa. It's just a thought. 70% of the league lineage came from Africa. It didn't come from Europe. We know all life came from Africa, but it's more important to go to Europe, where only 30% of your players' lineage comes from, but you can't find an airport where 70% of the league's lineage came from. It's just a thought. It's all fair and love and war. Big C, I want to close out today. I know we have the one shining moment. I know UCLA is playing in a game tonight against Michigan. I know USC, they've already finished playing with Gonzaga. We don't give out scores, but it's a must-see. TV is all fair and love and war. Basically, college football, the coaching carousel, ranking the most disappointing hires of the last 5 years. And it's just an opinion. Some people say, well, no, that's not a bad hire. But you think about it, number 10, Joe Moorhead, Mississippi State, the Bulldogs. It didn't take Mississippi State long to realize they made a major mistake when trying to replace the great coach Dan Mullen after a decent 8-5 first season, Big C. Moorhead flopped to 6-7 in his second season, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, recruiting down there in the SEC is tough, Charlton, unless you're in the state of Alabama generally, with Auburn and the University of Alabama, even down in Florida. And Mississippi State has always been trying to find its way. After Dan Mullen left, they haven't had much success.
Yeah, haven't had much success. You also look at number 9, Dana Holgorsen, Big C. The Houston Cougars, man, they're living right in Houston, at least their college football program and basketball program, Big C. He took over for Major Applewhite. He was expected to do big things. Hasn't happened yet, but in a short tenure, the Cougars, they're just 7-13, which is not going to cut it in Texas, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, here's a guy that when he was at West Virginia, Charlton, was very competitive. He had a couple quarterbacks that were very good, that went on to the NFL. But he has not found his stride down there in Houston. They haven't had much success really in a consistent run since the run and shoot down in the Astrodome.
Yeah, the run and shoot. And the Astrodome is still in existence. They just empty it, if that makes sense to you. The great Charlie Strong, number 8 on the list. South Florida Bulls, the first year in Tampa. It went very well for Charlie Strong, Big C. The Bulls were 10-2, but things quickly crumbled. Afterwards, Strong went 7-6 the next year before they spiraled to a 4-8 season in 2019, which was enough reason for Florida to send him packing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlie Strong has had 2 bad runs since he left the University of Louisville, Charlton. He matriculated down to Texas and found that the good old boys down there weren't in love with him because he spent too much time out in the sun getting the tan. He went down to Florida and thought he'd find a little more love, Charlton, but the players weren't appreciative.
What did Ike and Tina turn to Tina and say, what's love got to do? It's all fair and love and war. Number 7, the great Chad Morris. Arkansas Razorbacks, that's a good basketball program. There any signs of life in the SEC West? I think they should go back to the Big 12, if that makes sense. But as a matter of fact, he was fired after limiting to a 4-18 record in less than 2 seasons. It marked that included an 0-14 run in the SEC. And to make matters even worse, Big C, his last hurrah was a 45-19 loss to Western Kentucky. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, their last 2 coaches have gotten their butts whipped down there, in Hall Country. Brett Bielema didn't find much success. And you look at Moores, he left SMU, thought he could play with the big boys, and found out, they got a little more thump in their tank.
They got a little more thump in their tank, and instead of wine, they drink moonshine. The great number 6 on the list, the great Tom Herman, Texas Longhorns, Big C. Tom Herman wasn't offered during his 4 years at Austin, but the Horns went 32-18. They were also 22-14 in the conference of Big 12, Big C. He won all 4 bowl games, which they played, which is good for Texas, but at that same time, it's not good enough. And I think they went 7-3 in last year And people were saying this is a team they expect to win the Big 12, but they haven't been consistent Big 12 winners since the great Mac Brown left Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that was the reason Mac Brown was let go, Charlton, because that team was falling off. I think a big problem with a lot of boosters in college basketball is that they have short-term memory.
Yeah.
They think about when things were good with their programs a decade or 2 decades ago, and they keep trying to find that needle in the haystack for the next great coach.
Yeah.
They don't have time to sit around and be patient. They're giving these coaches 3-year runs in college football. It takes 4 years to get through your entire class, sometimes 5 years, Charlton.
Yeah.
And coaches are just not getting the opportunity to develop young talent any longer.
Yeah, they got to do it fast. Number 5 on the list, the great Chip Kelly. The UCLA Bruins in March Madness tonight, Big C. They got to get UCLA back into the Rose Bowl, if that makes sense to you. But when you consider what Kelly did, he signed a 5-year contract worth more than $20 million. You would expect more of him. He was 10-21 in 3 years at UCLA, especially since he tore up the conference in his first go-around with the Oregon Ducks, Big C. Your thoughts?
And that's what the boosters were thinking, that all that talent that he was getting to come to Oregon, Charlton, he didn't have Uncle Phil Knight down there at UCLA, Charlton, but they're in the Rose Bowl every home game. It's just, this game is insignificant when you only win 10 in 3 years. The Bruins still have a long way to go. They got a couple of young, talented quarterbacks. But if Kelly doesn't win at least 8 games this upcoming season, I think it's his last year at Westwood.
Yeah, he got mad with the administration. He said, you guys told me you wanted me to take the team to the Rose Bowl. I take them every week, but that's a different kind of bowl they wanted to get in, Big C. Not just for home games, but they wanted them in the Rose Bowl game, not just playing in the Rose Bowl. Number 4 on the list, the great Scott Frost, Nebraska Cornhuskers. Nebraska's never going to be an overnight success, Big C. Tom Osborne set the bar so high. Frost has struggled to produce anything of substance during the 3 seasons of the once proud program. 2019, the Huskers ended the season ranked in the country, and they limped to a 5-7 record. Unfortunately for Scott Frost, that's his best mark in 3 years, on his way to a 12-20 record. That doesn't cut it in Nebraska, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's kind of lucky there's not another university in that state to compete with, that everything is red out there in Cornhusker land. But the corn hasn't been growing that tall in the past couple of years for Scott Frost, so he's easy to spot. Maybe the frost has been killing the crops in the field, prior to them being harvested. But the Cornhuskers are a long way from Bob Devaney and Tom Osborne.
Yeah, they're a long way. And they're not going to get the home cooking in the Big Ten. They're outsiders looking in, if that makes sense to you. Number 3, the great Willie Taggart, Florida State Seminoles. Now, he was expected to be a strong fit in Tallahassee. Florida State, Bobby Bowden built that bar very high, went to 5-7 in Taggart's first year at the helm. He was 4-5 in his second season when the program decided to show him the door. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at African-American coaches, Charlton, you talk about having a short leash, no pun intended. You talked about Charlie Strong earlier, how quick he was ousted from his last 2 jobs at Texas and South Florida. You look at Willie Taggart, even make it 2 seasons where you'll have white coaches, Charlton, and you've talked about guys winning 10 games. Your buddy out there, Chip Kelly at UCLA, 10 games in 3 seasons, and still have a job. And Willie Taggart won more games than that in his 2 seasons, less than 2 seasons at Florida State.
Yeah. And you can Google that, Big C. It's all fair and level war. Number 2 on the list, the great Jeremy Pruitt. Tennessee Volunteers, though the former Alabama, Florida State, and Georgia defensive coordinator, he led UT to an 8-5 record in 2019. But there's no more of Peyton Manning's coming back to the ball for the great Tennessee Volunteers. When you think about it, Big C, in 3 years, he's 16 wins, 19 losses, 1 bowl game. His offenses were generally pretty bad for the SEC. And assistants who tried to coach under him, they were also revolving door trying to find greener pastures. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, not only that, Charlton, you got to be honest on your resume when you come in, and when they dig into your past, like with your friend Les Miles that was out there in Kansas, sometimes things turn up. And you weren't upfront about them, and there's a reason to get rid of you for cause. Yeah, they get rid of you just because. And finally on the list, if this guy can get a job with all of his shenanigans, there's hope for everybody, Big C. I told you I believe in the Wizard of Oz. I used to watch the Wizard of Oz many times growing up. I was always asking for health, wealth, and wisdom. It's all fair in love and war for our entire family. Number 1, Les Miles on the list. Kansas Jayhawks, Big C. They hired the former LSU coach Les Miles to take over a program in November 2018. There was plenty of optimism, and he would perhaps improve Kansas, and some thought he would bring it back to recognition.
But less than 3 years later, the Miles era is over. This all comes after Coach Miles and the Jayhawks just had an ugly 0-9 season, Big C. They were rarely competitive, and he was caught lying about his background after a year of going 3-9 in his first season, and they said enough's enough, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, here it is. You're brought in as a coach, not an assaulter, Charlton. And the egregious acts that he had been alleged of against the young women back at the University of LSU, Charlton, just couldn't be stood for out there in Kansas. A place where they talk about purity and the home of Dorothy. Yeah,
the purity and the home of Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away. I think there's so much going on in this country. I love doing our show because we can touch on so many things that I hear oftentimes repeated on other programs, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've known that's how mainstream has operated for many, many moons, Big C. I look forward to the great basketball being played in March Madness. It's tough for officials. Do you blow a whistle when you see two people foul, or do you not blow a whistle when you see sometimes people don't even get hit and they blow a whistle, but you can't blow a whistle when you see two people fouling the person that's trying to throw the shot up in the air? It's all fair and level war. March Madness is back. There's a lot of good things going on in the sports universe. Wishing everybody nothing but the best. Big C, final story. I told you about allergies, and I think a lot of young kids, these 2-year-old kids, they can learn something about Mother Nature, because when a kid has allergies, they'll let the snot run all down their nose. They'll put it in their hands. They'll drink the snot, Big C. They'll even rub it all over their face. That's why very little kids don't have wrinkles, Big C. Would you agree? Your thoughts?
Well, but they got sticky skin, Charlton, and you don't want them to give you a kiss on the cheek.
Yeah, it's all fair and level war. Big C, I hope everybody can rise and shine. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose, Big C? What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I think the world is starting to awaken to social agendas that are going on. The Olympic Committee, Charlton, stated today that they would allow athletes to take a knee during their national anthem without any backlash from the Olympic Committee. I think that's a great advancement in the world of sports. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They'll always stand behind everybody and help them up.
It's all fair and level work. Colin Kaepernick took a knee. People said, I can't believe he took a knee. What's disrespect? Chauvin takes a knee, murders a man. People say, well, maybe he really didn't. Maybe there was already something wrong with him. It's not right. We got to do better as a country. We got to do better. You can follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, iHeartRadio podcast. And as my mama always says, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.